Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for the Tag to Teach Ag discussion as the state of the agricultural education profession is explored. First and foremost, thank you and congratulations to all of you for stepping up and having a desire to serve the Kansas FFA Association. And we hope that this informative session will help you be just a little bit more prepared for a really big week that you have next week. As you are joining us with your Zoom, we will be utilizing a raise hand function. So if you can try to locate that, it's under the participant screen, and that function will allow you to raise your hand as we ask some questions in the first part of our presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, use the raise hand function if you agree with any of the statements. How many of your agriculture teachers have more than 25 years of experience? If so, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, let's look at the next question. How many of you have experienced a change of ag teachers during your time in high school? If so, please use the raise hand function. Looks like we have about a third of you. Keep your hands raised as we go through these questions. Next one. How many of you come from a program that has considered adding or has recently added an additional ag teacher? If that is an experience you have had, please raise your hand. And our last question, is it important to you that FFA programs exist for future generations? And if you agree, please raise your hand. Obviously, at this time, most of our hands are all raised, and we appreciate that little interaction you could provide me here as we get started. One of the critical issues we're going to explore today is the shortage of agricultural educators across the nation. And I truly believe that if the future of FFA and agricultural education is important to you, we have to provide some very clear information on this issue and help you educate others on the long-term impact that this could have on the future of agricultural education and FFA across the nation, but also in the state of Kansas. So let's take a look at the state of our profession. What is the state that we are dealing with, and what do our ag teachers look like as a group? We'll start with defining the problem, and the problem is pretty simple, really. It's demand and supply. We have a greater demand for agricultural education graduates than we have a supply. Honestly, I spend most of my time in June and July answering the phone saying, I'm sorry, I do not have any agricultural education candidates left. They've all taken jobs. And although this is a critical situation to Kansas, it is not unique to Kansas. In fact, if you look at the nation as a whole, the states that are highlighted in red are suffering a shortage. Some of those shortages more critical than others. So it's something that as a nation, we have to look at what we're going to do to solve. So what are the effects of having an ag teacher shortage? First and foremost, we know that ag teachers are incredibly important to their communities, and they have a huge impact on the local community, mainly in the agribusiness industries. They have impacts on student organizations within, but also including outside the FFA and the Ag Ed program. Ag teachers are very involved in professional organizations, specifically the one for ag teachers called the National Association of Agricultural Educators, but they're also really involved in Farm Bureau organizations, community organizations that are in those small towns and larger areas in which they serve. They're involved and connected with government agencies, especially those related to agriculture. They're influential in commodity groups and agriculture trade groups, and they are a huge important part of post-secondary education because most of the time we're going to those ag teachers to get future ag students to study in colleges across the state. So if we want to grow FFA membership, and most of you I would assume would like to do that, and we want to increase the number of FFA chapters, we have to have more ag ed programs. We can't open new ag ed programs if we don't have an increased supply of teachers. There are some hurdles that some schools are facing, and although they have a huge desire and believe that ag ed would be great for them, they have some concerns, if you will, about hiring a teacher right now because they're concerned that they may not be able to find the right fit for their community. We know that the ag teacher is the heart of the local program, and the local program is the heart of the National FFA Association. And without quality teachers, we're not going to have quality programs. We also know that decisions are driven by numbers, and a shortage of numbers in agricultural education can lead others to call that a lack of interest. And I don't think that we in any way, shape, or form have a lack of interest in FFA or the future of agricultural education. So we have to be able to provide young people to go into these communities and provide that service. So who do we bring to the table to help solve this problem? There are lots of key players that we can look to in Kansas, especially related to agriculture in Kansas. One of which is called the Kansas Association of Agricultural Educators. Each of the ag teachers in the state could, and many do, belong to this organization, and it is specifically getting involved in how can we grow our young professionals, how can we make our ag teachers better. They have a huge investment in having enough ag teachers to fill our shortages. Post-secondary institutions that train in ag education obviously can be impacted by a shortage, and they have an increased motive to do some recruitment and get more people into their doors to learn about the future of agricultural education possibilities. The Kansas Department of Education obviously has an influence. Mr. Dillon, who serves as the Kansas FFA advisor, he is employed by the Kansas Department of Agriculture as an agriculture consultant, and he is a key player in how can we overcome the shortage of ag teachers. You, as members of Kansas FFA and with support with the Kansas FFA Foundation, are really important as we look to how can we overcome this shortage, how can we encourage young people like you to consider ag education as a career, and potentially get some funding to help support the ability to teach people about the future of agricultural education through the Kansas FFA Foundation. The Kansas Department of Agriculture has a huge investment in the future of ag ed because it's so directly related to the agriculture workforce across our state. All of these key players come to the table and all really realize that the shortage of ag teachers is a concern, and we're looking for solutions and ideas from you to help us overcome this shortage. So some fast facts, and these, many of them are going to be gleaned off of the sheet that you received last week, or a couple of weeks ago rather, when you were on campus for the career development events and the growth interviews that went with that. If we take a look, there are 176 ag education programs in the state of Kansas, and 208 ag teachers are employed in those programs. We've seen some pretty significant growth, which is providing an additional strain on our shortage of teachers. In Kansas, we have started 16 new programs over the last 3 years, and 25 ag education programs have more than one teacher. Some of them have 2, 3, or even 4 teachers who teach at one school location. As we move forward, we're going to talk a lot about percentages of teachers of this or that, and this will give you an idea of how many we're talking about. The percentage of ag teachers is based on 208 teachers in our state. Let's start with the gender, and this is one of the facts I find to be one of the most interesting. If we look at our current ag teachers in Kansas, 72% of them are male and 28% of them are female. This is something that's changed a lot in the last 5, 10, and 15 years, and it's due to change a lot more unless we can do some targeted recruiting. College students majoring in agricultural education is almost the exact opposite. It looks at that in K-State ag education today, we have a 30% population of men and a 70% population of women. This isn't a problem to have lots of females excited about ag ed. In fact, it's really exciting. But the concern is if we could increase our male interest in agricultural education as a career, then that could be a key player in overcoming the shortage of ag teachers that we are experiencing. Again, let's take a look at our ag teachers as a whole. If we divide it out by age, and that's what this chart is showing right here, if we take the 20s, if we take those that are over 50 years old, that'll be this 23% and this 3%, that's showing us the 26% of our ag teachers are over 50 years old and may choose to have the right to retire in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. With that being said, we have to be ready to fill these open positions. And we have to begin solving that problem now, because if our recruitment efforts are even in the high school, if we look at freshmen and sophomores in high school, you're looking at young people who are 6 or 8 years from being ready to teach. And that is a gap in which a lot of these individuals may choose to no longer be in the profession. Our experience and our age doesn't necessarily directly correlate, and I wanted to take a look at both of those. One of the statistics that can be concerning is that only half of our teachers have less than 10 years of experience. And if we look at that statistic, the concern with that is there's not a whole lot of those in their 11 to 15 and 16 to 20 years who can serve as really awesome mentors for these young people who are taking leadership roles in their associations. We need this group to grow because we need to lean on them as leaders and mentors for our young generation of teachers coming on. The group that's 26 or higher, it's looking like they will be retiring soon, and so we're needing to fill this gap. And my concern is that the 50% having 10 or less experience is going to get higher before it gets lower, and we need to be aware of that statistic. One of the exciting things to talk about in agricultural education is the demand for our graduates. It is up and has been up for a long time. However, it's going up dramatically because we've started 16 new programs, and 3 programs have added teachers over the last 3 years. I am taking calls not just from Kansas, but multiple calls from the state of Nebraska. I've taken calls from California, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, all wanting to hire our grads, which is exciting, but it just goes back to that demand is so very high for our young people, and if we had more teachers, they would also experience a really high demand for them once they graduate with the teaching degree in ag education. So one of the exciting statistics for us is that our graduates who are coming and getting a degree in agricultural education over the last 4 years, over 90% of them have chose to teach. So one of the areas we don't need to necessarily focus on is helping young people choose ag education as a career, because that is very popular. Even though we are at 90% of our graduates teaching, we're still short teachers every single year. One of the issues that we want to take a look at are compensation. The average starting salary for our new graduates over the last 3 years has been $36,000. Now keep in mind, 82% of our teachers across the state of Kansas make additional income for FFA compensation. That might look like an FFA stipend so that they can get compensated for the time that they're working with FFA events. It might be an extended contract that allows them to do the work that they need to do in the summer, like attend the state FFA convention, the state conference for chapter leaders, help with the county fair and other summer events, do supervised agricultural experience visits so that they can continue to interact with their students. However, the compensation is not just about the money. We know that teachers have great health insurance benefits. They have retirements, and the health insurance will depend upon the district that they work for. Retirement plan is a statewide plan. Teachers receive paid sick leave, paid personal leave. One of the things that I find to be the most exciting for me as an early career teacher was talking to my peers who all had to figure out, well, I have to work either Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I'm trying to decide which one I'm not going to be with my family. And not only did I have Christmas and Thanksgiving off, but for them, I had multiple days off for that event. Time with family and being able to return back home if you aren't teaching in your home area is definitely a huge benefit that we experience as agricultural educators. Early retirement opportunities, job security is really high, and you can do other things in your communities related to working with young people or in the agriculture community. Some young people don't really understand what an agriculture educator might study and what they teach. Some of our programs are way more specific, and it might not necessarily be the types of areas that a young person sees themselves being a great teacher at. While some other programs might be an experience that they would get really excited about. Let's say, for example, you come from a program who maybe has a really high influence in horticulture and agriculture mechanics, and you have a real big desire to learn and share about animal science. Well, just by going to a different program, you might be able to see that your skills could be used in that area. So let's take a look at what an ag ed major would study. They're going to study general education courses like your speech, your mathematics, your sciences, and your social sciences. And then they're going to take your education courses. If you have a desire to work with young people and you have that people person kind of personality, the education courses are going to take that interest and really help you equip yourself with the skills you need to be a great teacher. And then to make sure that you understand the content that you'll be asked to teach, you're going to take courses in agriculture, all areas of agriculture. In the College of Agriculture, we take the basic classes in horticulture, animal science, ag mechanics, agribusiness, agronomy, food science, and entomology. And then you can choose to focus more time in the areas that you'd like to learn more about. The bottom line is you don't have to know everything. It's okay. You have a 4-year degree to help you fill in those gaps. Some facts about the profession. Teaching, in my opinion, really is rocket science. I mean, obviously it isn't rocket science, but it's that difficult. And for some people, it comes really natural and they can be very successful at it. But not just anyone can be a great teacher. In your time and formal education from kindergarten up until now, I am certain you've experienced some really awesome teachers. And you may have also experienced some that weren't so awesome. You can learn from both of them as a future teacher. But what are those skills of teachers that made them really, really good? And who are the people you know that have those skills to be a great teacher? Those are the types of people we need to target to be the future generation of agriculture educators. So we talked about who has the skills, but what specifically are these skills we should be looking for? The ideal candidate for an agricultural educator is going to work well with young people, adults, and administrators, and they can get connected with that community. You need the skills that are really going to make you a people person and work with all ages and backgrounds of people. You might be asked to work long hours and make commitments and do some travel, but we also see those as really exciting things that an agri-educator gets to do. You want to be able to follow policies and work well with your peers and your supervisors in order to be able to become an important part in that education setting of the high school that you might work in. The major skills are the ability to manage students in teaching and learning experiences, and organization, responsibility, and patience. All of those are really important when we're growing the next generation of young people. We talked about financial compensation, but a lot of the benefits of a career in ag ed aren't about the money. They're about what you get to do and the difference that you get to make. You are constantly challenged. No 2 days are the same. You get the opportunity to really make a difference in the lives of young people. I know each and every one of you have experienced an ag teacher who made a difference for you. And for me, that was why I wanted to study agricultural education. I loved youth, I loved agriculture, and I had the utmost respect for the people who had worked with me through the 4-H and FFA organizations. You get to study all areas of agriculture. I remember thinking back when I was looking at the right degree for me, and I really just couldn't decide. I knew I wanted to study agriculture, but I didn't know what. And that, to me, led me to agricultural education because I got to study all areas of agriculture at a level that I could get excited about. But then what I really got to learn the most about was working with the people, which was really attractive to me. I learned later on that flexibility is huge and that we do have a lot of flexibility with this career, and I value that more than I ever thought that I would. Working with the community and really becoming a pillar in your community is an exciting part of being an agricultural educator, and being able to do hands-on education. When it was a beautiful day outside, I didn't have to stay in the classroom and study the lesson of the day. I could almost always make that lesson come alive outside. Maybe we were catching insects for entomology, maybe we were studying soils, maybe we were going on a nature walk, but we were always able to go outside and learn hands-on and take advantage of those opportunities, unlike any of the other classes that my students took in high school. We know that there's huge demands for agriculture educators in the high school setting, but just because you get a degree in agricultural education doesn't mean that you have to teach and the only thing you can ever do is teach. We have huge advancement opportunities in the arena of education and also in the arena of agriculture. In education, you can become a principal, a superintendent, work for a technical college, a community college, or the State Department of Education, or the National Buffet Organization. In the other careers related to agriculture, our graduates and our young teachers are sought after to start working in agriculture lending, be extension agents, commodity groups, work with production consulting, and work in agricultural sales and marketing. People know that our ag teachers have a diverse background in all areas of agriculture, and most importantly, they know how to work with people. And those two skills make them highly sought after in the field of agriculture for a variety of careers. So the question we're going to ask is, what can you do and what can we do? As a state FFA officer candidate, what can you do to influence young people to consider agricultural education as a career and educate people about the shortage? And as a group, what can we do? How can we overcome this challenge so that we can make the future of agricultural education very bright for the Kansas and for the nation? And at this point, I'll open it up for questions. You may unmute yourself and ask your question verbally, or you have the ability to type in your question and then I will read it aloud. So at this point, please answer any questions that you have.